Hey, what is happening, guys? How are you doing? This is Rob of Rule of Two Review. Welcome back to the channel, and today we're talking about a possible remake of Resident Evil 3. So, we're all obviously aware of the Resident Evil 2 remake, which came out earlier this year in January. A big hit, a great game, a phenomenal game in my opinion, actually. One of my favorites of the year. And because of that, and because of the success of that game, a lot of people have been talking about what about a remake of Resident Evil 3. We also know that Capcom remade Resident Evil 1 back in the day in 2002 for the Nintendo GameCube, which is also fan-freaking-tastic. And so there seems to be a pretty solid trend of Capcom remaking the classic Resident Evil games. And there's now a new rumor about Resident Evil 3 getting the remake treatment specifically right now. And it seems like the genesis of this rumor is actually Spawnwave Media, who a lot of you guys know. Obviously, Spawnwave is a huge channel. John is a good friend of mine. I've been on the Spawncast many times. And this seems to be a scoop that he is breaking, and plenty of other outlets are now also talking about it. Eurogamer is talking about it. IGN, I think, is also talking about it. And so the rumors are now making the rounds. Obviously, I want to give credit to John and Spawnwave, and his video about this topic will be linked below as well. So he kind of discusses it in his own little, like, 5 or 6 minute video. Please go and check it out if you haven't seen it already. And now this gets me excited about the possibilities of this rumor. But there's another part to this rumor beyond just Resident Evil 3 getting a remake. But apparently, according to this rumor, the game is supposed to be coming out next year in 2020, the year that starts in literally like 6 weeks from today. So that part is very unique and interesting to me, and I have a couple of feelings about it, but it is part of the story, so I wanted to dive into it. Now, first and foremost, of course, this is not confirmed, so this is nothing that anyone should be taking to the bank just yet. It certainly makes sense for a lot of reasons, but it's not like 100% true. So let's just remember that. We're going to talk about it like it could be a real thing, but we don't know that it's a real thing just yet. Secondly, I have to say that I'm very excited at the idea. I loved Resident Evil 3, what I played of it back in the day, but part of the reason I'm so excited about the idea of this is that it's one of the few Resident Evil games I'd never played to completion. Of all of the main Resident Evil games that have ever come out, the only ones that I haven't actually completed were Resident Evil 3 Nemesis, this game we're talking about today, and then also Resident Evil Code Veronica. Now, I played both of them, Resident Evil 3 on the PlayStation 1, Code Veronica on the Dreamcast, and I really enjoyed them, but just, you know, circumstances, we're going back 20 years ago, I don't know, I never finished those games, and it's sad to me. Resident Evil 3 is terrifying, because for those of you who know, that's the game where Nemesis, like the enemy, is basically kind of chasing and hunting you throughout the game, and it's really creepy, and he's busting through walls, and he's yelling stars at you, and it's just like, it is so tense and terrifying. That was probably part of the reason I didn't finish it back in the day. Maybe, I don't know. But it is a really, really good game. And when you imagine how they could take that concept and improve upon it with a remake by today's standards, with today's technology, it's incredibly exciting. So yeah, I'm very excited at the idea of this thing happening. And overall, I do certainly believe that we will eventually get this game. Now, to be completely honest with you, there are some elements to this rumor that I'm still not 100% on. I'm pretty iffy on some of what they're talking about here. The biggest thing would be the release year, saying that it's going to be coming out next year in 2020. Obviously, that's possible, and the rumor is stating it, and so maybe it makes sense. And as people, I was talking with people on Twitter about it yesterday when it kind of started to pop up as a story, and people said, hey, like they could be reusing assets from the Resident Evil 2 remake, so maybe it's that much easier to make the game that much quicker. And yeah, that's a good point. That certainly could be true. I mean, my thinking is that when the Resident Evil 2 remake was first announced in 2015, people I think forget. And it wasn't until 2019 that the game came out, 4 years later. So, okay, that was a pretty huge development window that they had for that game, and to think that only a year later, after Resident Evil 2, they'd be ready with Resident Evil 3, seems tough to believe. They might have two teams working on it, you know, at the same time, or it could be something where, you know, a bunch of the RE2 team went over to RE3 within the last year, and they were reusing assets, so it is just a shorter development time. That could certainly be the case, but it still feels strange. And the other elements, too, are the fact that I personally have believed that Resident Evil 8 was going to be the next Resident Evil game we would get. Like, maybe they were planning on doing these staggers where they do, you know, they re-released Resident Evil 1 and Resident Evil 0 Remake, and then they gave us Resident Evil 7, and then they came out with the Resident Evil 2 Remake. Why wouldn't they then go to Resident Evil 8, and then Resident Evil 3 Remake after that? Like, I thought maybe they were going to be going into that staggered pattern, and I still kind of want to believe that. I feel like Resident Evil 8 would be the game they would be farther along in development in than a remake of 3, because 7 also came out 2 years ago, so why wouldn't the 7 team have moved to RE8, and now that RE2 is done, they would be moving to the RE3 remake, you know, a year, 2 years, or whatever after RE7. And so, you know, it's just like, I don't know, it just feels like RE8, Resident Evil 8 makes more sense than Resident Evil 3. But the rumor is what it is. They say that Resident Evil 3 Remake is the next game to be coming out. But we also have to remember that Capcom is notorious for January releases, and their Resident Evil games also tend to come out in January. They've done that with most of their last several Resident Evil games, even going back to Resident Evil 4, which came out in January of 2005. And so now it's like, okay, well, if they're talking about Resident Evil, the next Resident Evil game in 2020, well, January 2020 is only a couple of weeks away, which is crazy. It's almost December, which means it's almost January. And so, you know, there's no way that they would announce the Resident Evil 3 remake like now or in the next couple of weeks and then say, oh, it's coming out next month in January. There you go. Like, no, they would give a lot of lead up and hype and build up time. And so it would have to be a situation where they would be willing to break tradition and release Resident Evil 3 Remake later in the year, which is possible. Or it could be something where the rumor of 2020 isn't accurate, and maybe it's like meant for 2021. Imagine if it's January 2021. That window feels a little bit more natural and comfortable to me and more believable to me, so I could certainly buy into that. Either way, for now, it's all really still just a mystery anyway. No one can say for sure. It's just a rumor. It may just be a complete lie outright anyway. Obviously, I tend to trust and believe in Spawnwave, so I think that John knows what he's doing. He's just reporting it as a rumor as well, so that's fine. It's not about saying if it doesn't happen that he or other outlets are lying, but there are times where rumors just aren't true, or nothing comes of the rumor. And so maybe that happens here. But overall, big picture, I tend to believe that a remake of Resident Evil 3 is in the works and is going to be coming, whether it's the next game or whether it's meant to come after Resident Evil 8, whether it's coming out next year or whether it's coming out in 5 years, I don't even frickin' know, but I can't imagine that Capcom won't want to continue this trend. They've had success with Resident Evil 1, Resident Evil 0, Resident Evil 2. People want Resident Evil 3. Make Resident Evil 3, and we know that they're going to sell a lot of copies, and it's going to be a huge hit. And so, yeah, we'll just have to wait to see what happens and what comes of this rumor. The Game Awards is happening in a couple weeks. Maybe they're going to have a big Resident Evil announcement at the Game Awards. Maybe they announce 8. Maybe they announce 3. Maybe they announce both. Maybe they announce something that's neither of those. Anything's possible. So what do you think about this rumor? Are you excited at the idea? Do you want a Resident Evil 3 remake? Would you prefer Resident Evil 8, kind of like I would, first at least? Whatever you feel, talk about it below. And with that, this video is a wrap. Thanks, of course, as always, for tuning in, guys. This is Rob of Rule 2 Review, and I'll catch you next time on another video.